kick off our program with our featured speaker. Here tonight is to share her story of hope is Trisha Fenimore. I have known Trisha for about 18 months, but finally had the pleasure of meeting her in person today. Trisha, I feel like I've known you forever. Watching you encourage others by sharing your past struggles and sharing how God has helped you transform your life is inspiring. Trisha Fenimore is an award-winning Christian author and speaker. Her debut book, Pray for Them, has won 2 silver medal awards for Book of the Year, the North American Book Awards, and currently holds a 4.9 star rating on Amazon. Trisha's signature 1-minute sermons have attracted 164,000 followers on Instagram, 153,000 followers on Facebook, and over 8 million views on TikTok. And her most important ministry is being a wife and a mom. Please help me welcome Trisha to the stage.
Thank you so much. You're welcome. All right. Sorry, I gotta get myself set up with some tissues and water. I'm a crier, so we're gonna try our best here. Thank you so much to this incredible organization and this amazing event. I mean, what an honor and truly a humbling privilege to be here tonight. There are several titles that people use to describe me these days. Former atheist, recovering alcoholic, wife, mom, Christian, writer, and social media personality, which I have to admit to you is still very strange. But there is one title that nobody has ever used to describe me, and that is a history buff. Nobody has ever accused me of being a history buff. In fact, when I was younger, I'll be honest, I never really saw the point. I thought that it was really boring. I thought that everything happened so long ago, that we were so much more advanced now. What's the point? I know that there are some people in the crowd today who are history lovers, and you're probably white-knuckling your seats, very nervous about where this speech is about to go. But don't worry, you're gonna enjoy how the story ends, because God works in very mysterious ways. And the man that he called me to marry, my incredible husband here in the front row, is absolutely obsessed with history. Anecdotally, we went to the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force today with our 2 boys, and that was absolutely incredible. I mean, what an amazing place that you guys have here. And I'm pretty sure we got an entire week's worth of cardio in as we chased our toddlers around the different aisles and wings. No pun intended on wings. But when they say opposites attract, they really are not lying when it comes to this regard with my husband and I. He will correct documentaries, which, I'll be honest, I didn't even know you could do. I thought, it's on TV, it's gotta be true, they gotta be factually accurate. Meanwhile, I probably only believed that because I didn't know much history. But we'll be watching one of these historical documentaries, and he'll interject and say, actually, they sort of blurred the timeline there, it happened this way, or that's something that's often misattributed to so-and-so, but it's actually another person. And me being the faith-filled, subservient, and feisty wife that I am, I'll jump on my phone and go on the internet to see who's right. I'll scour these academic journals. I go on the peer-reviewed, scientific academic things, and I'm reading, and I've got to tell you, this man is undefeated against documentaries. One way that I know that the age of miracles is still upon us is that somehow his enthusiasm for history has actually rubbed off on me. And I'm not only now interested in history, I'm actually pretty excited by it. And over the course of our 8-year relationship, I've learned a few things. Now, I still couldn't tell you all the years that the wars started, unless it's the War of 1812. That one I think I could get. But of all the lessons that I've learned from history, the most notable one I have learned is the great lie of humanity. This lie is so consistent, so persistent, and so pervasive, it can be found in every civilization, every time period, every continent, and every culture that humanity has ever seen. The great lie of humanity that slithers and sneaks its way into every society and every age that I have ever learned about, and that is the lie that some lives are less valuable than others. You could get on a time machine right now. I don't care where you stop. You'll see the lie. You'll see it somewhere in the form of race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic class, mental ability, physical ability, age. The other day, I was reading a news story on social media, and I scrolled down to read the comments, which I don't know if you know this, that's never a good idea. And this particular story was about drug decriminalization policies, a topic that's of deep importance to me as somebody in recovery for addiction. And after reading about these decriminalization policies that have become so tragically common in recent years, I went on to read some of the most callous and hate-filled comments you could ever imagine. They're addicts. Who cares if we lose a few of them? Just give them what they want. Society will be better off. You'll notice in your programs that it says that I'm 12 years sober. But through God's grace and His strength alone, today I get to celebrate 13 years of sobriety when He delivered me from addiction. Through His immeasurable mercy, I have been afforded the privilege of being a wife and a mother, and I have been given the profound blessing of helping other women find both God and sobriety in their own lives. And I know what some of you may be thinking. You're thinking, well, that's great, Trisha, but what does this have to do with the pro-life movement? What does this have to do with abortion? The last 13 years, I have been blessed to meet tens of thousands of women in recovery, thousands of whom I have met in person and spoken with directly. And several years back, I noticed an alarming trend. One shared experience of many young women trying to get sober today, that they were drinking and using drugs as a way to cope with the trauma of having received an abortion. These are women who were sold the lie by a pro-choice culture that an abortion was the answer to all of their fears. These are women who emerge on the other side, ravaged by guilt, wrecked from shame, and traumatized and broken in ways they never could have imagined. I have looked in these women's eyes as they tell me desperately how they pursued drugs and alcohol as a way to take it all away, as a way to escape the pain, the guilt, the memories, the horror. I stand before you today to share that the abortion to addiction pipeline in women today is not a statistical anomaly. It is not a rounding error. It is an indisputable fact within a pro-choice culture that is hell-bent on being hell-bent. Within the addiction recovery community, it is a generally accepted estimate that addiction is has an 80 to 90% fatality rate. I think of Elizabeth's New Life Center and the incredible work that they do. And as a mother, I think of the precious children's lives being saved here. But as somebody in recovery, I think of the precious mothers' lives being saved here as well. If ever there was a group doing the Lord's work here on earth, it is Elizabeth's New Life Center. Psalm 139, verses 13 and 14 says, "For you, God, formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, God, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. Sorry, I warned you I was a crier. Elizabeth's New Life Center not only understands that scripture, they embody it day in and day out in the work they do, serving as his hands and feet here, literally bringing that fact to life here on earth as is in heaven. The great lie of humanity is truly just one long list of humans thinking up reasons and excuses to devalue, indignify, and dehumanize one another. We think up all these reasons why they're not quite as human as us, and we rationalize it in our minds. But the Bible doesn't tell us that our minds can comprehend the value of a life. It doesn't tell us that our minds can understand the value of a life. It says our souls already know. If you are like me, you watched the news last week, and maybe you saw people dressed up like abortion pills, dancing in the streets, giving out free abortions out the back of a truck. And if you're like me, maybe you felt a little anger. Maybe you were talking to the TV like I was. Don't they know what they're doing? Until I felt the Holy Spirit arrive in me and say, no, they don't. And I was forced to pray the words of Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. We live in a culture filled with people living detached from the souls that know the value of a life. And detached from their souls, they are simply falling for yet another iteration of the great lie. Not only do we need to stand in the gap for these individuals, we need to pray for these individuals, but as Christians, it is our sacred responsibility to try to reattach and reintroduce them to their souls. 2 weeks before COVID hit Long Island, New York, I was in the hospital waiting room with my husband in labor with our firstborn son. And as we sat there in the waiting room, I noticed these computer printout, just computer papers with like the words, if you've been to China and have a cough, tell somebody. And I had seen a little bit of what was going on the news, and there I am in labor, and as the contractions hit, I was trying to hold my breath because everyone was sniffling and coughing around me. And some of you have had children in your life, and you know that when a contraction hits, holding your breath is literally the opposite of what you are supposed to do. But there I was. I wanted to protect the baby from whatever's going on. We were told then that I needed to go home and labor more. I needed to be further along in the labor before they would, admit me and help me deliver a baby. So we were getting into our car. We were walking through the parking lot to our car as another contraction hit, and it was so severe. I grabbed his arm, and I knew that the contractions were going to get worse. And I looked up at my husband, finally able to breathe in a contraction, so I guess there was a little bit of relief there. But after the contraction finally passed, I looked up at my husband with terror in my eyes, and I said, I am a 32-year-old married homeowner with a full-time job, a relationship with God, supportive family in the area, and we are hoping for a baby, and I am still absolutely terrified. Can you imagine the bravery of women who do not have all of those qualifiers and go on to become mothers? It is the work that Elizabeth's New Life Center does every single day, not because they think that it is right, but because in their souls, they already know. Because Elizabeth's New Life understands that the value of a life is not up for debate, it is not up for discussion, and that it sure shouldn't be up to a vote. I was born and raised in Ohio, and I followed issue 1, even though I was living in a different state. I followed issue 1 as that was going through. And I know the devastating turn that took for the pro-life movement here in Ohio. But God has called me here to deliver you a unique message of hope. Because remember those states decriminalizing even the hardest drugs? I have friends there. sober friends. Sober friends who were once addicted to those very same drugs, and yet they remain clean and sober. These days, the road to hell is paved with legislation seeking to normalize the obscene, but to a truly changed heart, the world can offer every sin and every vice available on a silver platter, but to that changed heart, they will push it back and say the timeless words, "Not today, Satan." And ultimately, legislation does not change hearts and reattach souls, but the gospel of Jesus Christ does. On this topic of abortion, I have found myself repeatedly asking, what would Jesus do? And I'm reminded of the woman at the well, a struggling woman with a complicated past, but with ears to hear. One heart at a time. That's what Jesus did. That's how Jesus did it. That's how Elizabeth's New Life Center does it. And it is not as fast as a pen stroke by some politician, but please take it from me, a former atheist, a recovering alcoholic and addict, and a former pro-choice supporter, that once that change of heart happens, there is no turning back. And one changed heart at a time, we can create a pro-life culture without a single piece of legislation supporting it. Because the only thing more powerful than those in power is the only source of true power. Jesus changed the world one heart at a time, and that is exactly what this organization does. They change the world one heart at a time through the gospel of Jesus Christ. One heart at a time, Elizabeth's New Life Center is combating the great lie and creating a pro-life world, and that my soul knows very well. Thank you. Oh, gosh.